Welcome to the latest edition of Until Saturday, coming live to you Sunday morning, Eastern Time. I'm in Pete Sampson's beautiful home in South Bend, Indiana, because press boxes have decided to close a lot earlier than they used to when Dave Ubben, my co-host who's joining me today, was the head of the FWAA. So this worked out well. We got the stories up. It was an incredible game. One of the best I've ever covered in my career.
That's awesome.
Anytime you get a walk-off win, it's a huge momentum shift for the sport, especially when it's a top 10 matchup. So Ohio State wins on the final play of the game, 17-14, excuse me. Kyle McCord, who's in his third game as Ohio State's full-time starter, led a game-winning drive, 65 yards in the final minute and a half, 15 plays, 5 for 13. Completions, and then Chip Trayanum scored with 1 1-yard run there to win the game. So today was a really huge, potentially playoff setting day for everybody because of all the top 10 matchups and the big time results that we got here, Dave. But I don't think that there was a bigger game than the Ohio State game. And I think the most important thing that we have to consider is how Ryan Day reacted to that win afterward, which was a 40-second tirade about how Ohio State is viewed as soft, and something that Lou Holtz said on the Pat McAfee show on Friday. There is a notion that Ohio State is soft. I think mostly because of the way that the Michigan games have gone the last 2 years. And Notre Dame, for the most part in that second half, took control of the game, started running it down Ohio State's throat. Ohio State did some weird play calls on 4th and 1 when it seemed like they were afraid to try to just mash the ball down their throats. And at the end of the game, they ended up winning. So what was your perception of Ohio State before this game, and what was your perception now that Ohio State won on the final play of the game?
I think it was interesting. First of all, we talked about this on Thursday, Ari. Shout out to Kyle McCord. I thought, well, if you had to give a percent chance when they took over on that last drive that he was going to be able to take them down to a touchdown, I would have said under 30, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, got that drive done, got the win. Impressive to do that in that situation on that stage. That's huge. But I think in general, it was interesting that Ryan Day sort of singled out. I mean, Lou Holtz is whatever. I don't really care about that. But Ari, that was a mainstream opinion, was it not?
Yeah, well, first, for those who haven't listened, why don't we show the audience what Ryan Day said on national television?
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now. What he said about our team, I cannot believe. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio, and it's always been Ohio against the world, and it'll continue to be Ohio against the world. But I'll tell you what, I love those kids, and we got a tough team.
All right, wait till he hears what Bob Stoops said about Texas next week.
Well, I think that there's a lot to unpack here, because first of all, you have a first-year starter who had, one of the best comebacks in Ohio State history, on the road. That's super important. But let's unpack this notion of softness, where it came from and why people think that. Mm-hmm. So, during my 10 years on the beat, Ohio State physically dominated people for the most part. Even when Urban Meyer was the head coach of this program, running the spread and bringing a new offense to Columbus, Ohio, the main tenet during those Carlos Hyde days, those Ezekiel Elliott days, were that even though we're going to spread it out and we're going to have elite level athletes on the outside, that when push comes to shove, you're not going to be able to stop Ohio State from running the football.
And they played bully ball when they wanted to, or when they needed to.
And they won a lot of games running bully ball with their quarterback too, with JT Barrett. Saw a lot of wins with JT Barrett, JT Wright, right, left play calls that were just like run the quarterback. It was kind of like Tim Tebow light. They were a very tough team back then. They didn't always win the big game, but they never lost because they got pushed around. So as Ryan Day's offense has begun to flourish at Ohio State, it looks a little bit differently than it did under Urban Meyer, because, what he has done as a coach is, obviously recruited the quarterback position exceptionally well. Brian Hartline and the run of receivers that they've brought in is certainly the deepest and best, most impressive recruiting
They've replaced
results.
Alabama as the best at that position right now.
I don't know that any coach in college football in the modern era of recruiting has accumulated talent at their position better or more efficiently than Ryan Day. And I'm assuming, or not Ryan Day, Brian Hartline. And you could go look that up. I mean, he has more top 100 receivers coming into this program than the entire Big Ten has top 100 players at every position combined.
Tashard choice at Texas is pushing him, Ari, but you're
yeah,
right.
Well, it's not. Go add it up. I guarantee you, it's not.
No, I mean, it's definitely the sustainability of it all.
I think argue. Where the notion of softness came from, Dave, is how this rivalry has shifted with the Michigan game. In both of the last 2 years, Michigan.
I will say, Ari, though, I think if that kick goes a little bit differently against Georgia, that narrative goes away also.
Well,
which
the thing
is
about
stupid, but it's true.
I don't know that I agree with that, because Ohio State is being criticized for being unable to beat teams that are built like Michigan, that are more so built like Notre Dame,
but
who
Georgia
want to run the ball.
Is.
No, I know, but it's just one of these deals where it's like in this game, Ohio State was winning 10-0. They were in complete control. Their defense was playing a great game. And usually when you shut out an opponent at Ohio State for the first half, that means the game is over.
Mm-hmm.
And what has happened in this game and happened before in Michigan games is that the other team has, continued to run the football and has done so in an efficient enough way where they take control of the game. And Notre Dame went on 2 double-digit drives, play-wise, in that third and fourth quarter to take a 14-10 lead, and it did so by running the ball. And there were a lot of Estime runs where he was hit at 3 yards downfield, and it ended up down 10. It looked like they were physically starting to tap out. And then the other thing you have is 2 separate scenarios where Ohio State faced 4th down and 1 or 4th and inches. In the second quarter, they threw the ball into the end zone, despite having a fullback on the field, and Marvin Harrison was not on there. And it's just like when you're 4th and 1 at Ohio State, the Urban Meyer Ohio State runs it in for a touchdown. And then later on in the game,
even if you get that 4th and 1 to do that, like that play call, if you're Ryan Day and you're that in your feelings about Lou Holtz saying you're soft, buddy, go prove it on that 4th and 1. Don't run an end around with Egbuka. What are we doing?
And that was 0-0 at that time. And then the second one, Dave, was 4th and inches, and Ohio State was down by 4 with, I believe, 5 to 8 minutes, one of those two in the game. And they ran a weird end around with Emeka Egbuka that got stuffed. And you start to think to yourself, what happened to the Ohio State that won games like this because they were bigger, faster, hungrier, and tougher? And Notre Dame is a very good football team this year. I think you said that they were going to flex this game. And
I've already been hit up by the Ohio State fans.
And it's okay. That's what happens when you're on a podcast. It's really hard to get everything.
There's a first time for everything. I'm learning what it's like to be wrong. It's never happened before. I don't love it.
Yeah. But, you'll Texas won by 100 too on Saturday. So
we'll get to the Longhorns. We'll get to the Longhorns.
But Ohio State didn't get those first downs. They didn't attempt to do them in the old Ohio State way. And for a while there, it looked like they were going to lose to Notre Dame in a similar fashion to the way that they lost to Michigan, which has been, controlling the games in the first half or being there in the first half and then getting beaten down until you no longer are able to compete or are equipped to compete physically. And if Ohio State would have lost that game, I think that Ryan Day probably felt like he was on the verge of losing this fan base. Twitter was a really ugly place when it was 14-10. And
usually it's very nice. That's crazy.
Yeah. Ohio State ended up winning the game at the end there. They had a 4th and 1 after all those 2 4th and 1s. They didn't do the right thing in the game. 4th and 1 with 3 seconds left from the 1 yard line. They ran the ball, and Notre Dame inexplicably had 10 men on the field, but they scored a 1 yard touchdown run to win the game. So here's the notion now. Ohio State won. They got down to the place that they didn't want to get down to, which is putting it all on Kyle McCord's shoulders to win the game. They go 65 yards in less than 90 seconds. I think he faced a 3rd and 7 or a 3rd and 9, a 4th and 7, and a 3rd and 19 on that drive, converted all of them. And they won the game by running it up the gut to win. So like that to me is like the weird dichotomy between, did Ohio State show it was tough at the end, or was Michigan watching this game tape in a few weeks licking their chops? Like, how do you think this game will be perceived moving forward?
I mean, softness is not a binary. Can we say that? Like, is this Ohio State team a team that's just going to push everybody around and be, a brick wall on defense? No. But like, I don't know that, soft was ever sort of a fitting descriptor. I think certainly teams, the Michigan the last couple years, like you said, I think is a huge part of it. But to me, regardless of the result, Ari, I still, having watched Georgia as much as I did last season, for them to hang in that game and basically be a coin flip away, that to me, like, I thought that Notre Dame could do some similar things to Michigan, and like you said, they did at times. But like, I do think, Ari, it does come down to like softness is not a binary. So like, they're not the toughest team in the world, but like, Ohio State's going to get pushed around by the big boys just doesn't really hold water.
Well, here's the thing that you have to say, and then we'll move on. But the type of game that Ohio State played against Georgia was a throw it around the field, 48 to 45.
Yeah, but they're still Georgia.
So
you still gotta win. You still gotta
Sure.
win on the line of scrimmage. You gotta protect. You gotta pressure. All that stuff.
I think that the notion of getting pushed around by less talented teams is the concerning part, not whether or not Ohio State is equipped to compete with other teams that are built like that.
The talent conversation with Michigan is so complicated because the raw numbers say they're less talented and they might have 7 offensive linemen drafted this year. So, like, what are we even talking about?
Yeah, and Notre Dame has a very good offensive line.
Yes, they do. One of the best in the country.
That I think Ohio State's probably going to be happy about is that their quarterback grew up overnight. We saw it happen. JT Tuimoloau made a huge play at the end of the game. And after all of the grab ass that ensued in that game, they won on a 1-yard touchdown run. So, I think Ohio State is in a good position now with 2 weeks to go before they played Penn State to kind of regroup, build with their quarterback position continually. And then they're playing Penn State at home and we're going to get another one. So, I think that Ryan Day got fired up for the first time in the 5 years he's been a head coach because I think he understands that you lose the fan base by people calling your program soft. Your fan base loses faith in who you are and what your program is if they believe that. And that's kind of the beginning of how things start to turn. So I thought it was a really big win for Ohio State. I think we're going to find out a lot about what Notre Dame is as we continue to go on into the season. Ohio State's going to be tested by Penn State. They're going to be tested by Michigan, and he'll have plenty of time to prove his toughness. But I thought it was a very good win for Ohio State. And it went from like complete and utter program meltdown to exhale and win and move on.
So silly. Like,
dude, I'm telling you,
you're not
it's
wrong,
not.
But you're not wrong, Ari, but it's still stupid. Like, at the end of the day, I came away from this game thinking those are 2 of the 6 best teams in the country. Whereas we don't need to relitigate it. But watching Texas Bama, I was like, these are 2 top 10-ish teams. So, like, this game really impressed me.
You just can't help yourself, can you?
I'm just saying, Ari. But that's what I saw tonight is 2 of the 6 best teams playing football.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I think it was a good win for Ohio State. I don't think you know how deep into the depths of the underground things would have gotten had they lost that game.
I know, but I'm just saying
not just lost that game.
I don't disagree with you, but it's stupid. Like,
losing the game the way that they would have lost it too, which is giving up 2 11 and 13 play drives and watching another running back run through your defense and carry people around. But at the end of the day, like it's a preschool.
You're not wrong, Ari. You're not wrong, but our job is to provide some sense of reality, and a 4-point loss on the road to a playoff-ish caliber team is not something to like start, breaking out the sackcloth and ashes for,
Yeah, I mean, you got to visit Columbus every now and then.
I'm not saying that it wouldn't have happened, Ari. I'm saying that when it happened, I'm going to roll my eyes at it because Ohio State would have been fine. Somebody has to lose these games. Somebody has to win these games. Like, is Notre Dame going to break down touchdown Jesus after this game and rebuild it? And like, we got to redesign it. We got to have it fresher so that the kids can get, more NIL.
But the thing that you have to understand here, Dave, and I'm telling you this, and anybody listening to the show, it's true. Ohio State was probably a made field goal away from winning a national championship last year.
Yes.
And this team's fan base is very lukewarm, if not trending in the wrong direction on their head coach. That's a fact.
I know it's a fact, and I'm saying it's stupid. I don't disagree with the word you've said, Ari. I'm just saying that mindset is insane.
Well, it's crazy what people start to believe when you lose to Michigan, and not just lose, get their ass kicked 2 years in a row. That means a lot more than to Ohio State fans and people on the outside can realize. And having lived it for a decade of my life, let me tell you, this is a very, very emotional fan base, a passionate fan base, one that expects their team to not only be good, but to be, expects them to not only be good, but to be physically superior and hungrier than their fan base. So, or their opponents. Sorry. Joe Mustachio here at 4 minutes left. That was really sad. 1 second left. I was jumping up and down, about to throw up from excitement. This roller coaster ride tonight was an all-timer. And I think the coolest thing about college football in general is, like, no matter how you contextualize it, like, it is probably going to be one of the best games of the year. Yeah. This was an iconic stadium. This was my first time going to South Bend. And let me tell you, it's a beautiful campus. There's something really special about this place. And you want to know what I like the most about it? Unlike other stadiums that I've been to at night when it's dark, there's no lighting up of the fans. Like, it's a very dark stadium. The only thing that's lit up is the field. So it's got this very theatrical feel to it. You had touchdown Jesus over here. You got the sun setting. I thought it was beautiful, and I'm so happy I got to experience it. And certainly going to talk a lot more about Ohio State and Notre Dame, who's not excluded from the playoff by any stretch of the imagination after losing this game.
They got some chances to get some wins.
That was a very Ohio State-centric conversation, but let me just throw one more thing into you, Dave. And sorry, I've been a little bit choppy. It's very late, and I'm trying to keep it together. But how on earth, if you're Marcus Freeman, do you have 2 plays
by choice
with the game on the line
by
with
choice,
only 10 players on the field?
And then you say that publicly after the game? Listen, I want Marcus Freeman to succeed. It'd be great if he did. He makes it really hard sometimes. The idea that in your mind, now I know a lot of stuff's happening fast, Ari. I know a lot of things are happening.
But it wasn't one play, it was 2.
Well, I know, but here's what I'm saying. In his mind, in the moment that mattered the most, he said, no, instead of sacrificing a half a yard for an illegal substitution, I would rather sacrifice 9.8% of my defense and play with 10 men on a play where they're
would
probably
you rather have
mash you?
A 4th and goal from the half-yard line with 10 players or with 11 players on the team?
Yes,
one of whom is probably 275 pounds, or would you rather
the fact that he did that arithmetic in his mind and came to the discussion and then said publicly after? Because, like, here's the thing: I've been on the sideline for games. Getting the right personnel is a exercise in controlled chaos that I think a lot of fans don't understand how hard it is to get the right guys in and out, like on special teams.
And I also don't know how you're
stuff.
supposed to identify there's only 10 people out there, because it's really hard to count to 11.
Well, I know, but he said he saw that they only had 10.
Yeah, no, I saw.
And he said, well, hold on. We're just, like, that is so insane to me that I can't even, like, that's.
And in 4 years, if he's on the hot seat, they'll talk about what happened here tonight.
Yes,
so
they will.
Okay. Very instrumental game. Very excited to have been there, but I think it's time to move on to the game that you were at.
I was also at a stadium for the first time today, Ari.
Autzen is beautiful.
It is fantastic. It was awesome.
Oregon beat the hell out of Colorado, 42-6. Bo Nix had 285 yards total offense, 4 touchdowns. Oregon's defense had 7 sacks. I know Travis Hunter didn't play, but what is your main takeaway from Colorado's undefeated run coming to a crashing halt?
What the heck, TCU is a little bit of it. Like, that's honestly like kind of a little bit, because you look at Nebraska, they're a disaster, and they don't have the offense to take advantage of, like, Colorado's offensive line and their corners. This is what they've been all year. They're not very good. They're not very deep. Without Travis Hunter, it's a huge loss, but, like, one corner is kind of like whatever. Like, that's not that big of a deal. They're not very good at corner, and they aren't very deep. But this is the first team that they played that could really exploit that. TCU had the receivers, but Chandler Morris didn't play well enough. And Bo Nix, I mean, they could have beat him 100 different ways in this game. You look at every number. I mean, it's just a bloodbath. And I think ultimately, like, it would be nice to inject a little more rationality into the Colorado conversation. I think this is a competent team, very flawed, very fun. But, like, there were people like, well, hey, why not? Is Colorado going to contend for a Pac-12 title? Are we going to think about this now? Like, no. but Colorado's also not a disaster. Like, I think that we maybe see the pendulum shift a little bit from like, can Colorado flirt around with the Pac-12 title? Or, now on the other end, it's like, well, Colorado might not win another game the rest of the year. They're going to start 3-0 and finish 3-9. It's like, all right, guys, like, chill out, And so that part of it, and I think Colorado is what it is. It's a supernova in the sport. Deion is who he is. People can't get enough of it. But I also think that it's important to highlight that regardless of what they did to Colorado, people are underrating Oregon's defense, which might make them, to me, like the team that I'm most intrigued by in the Pac-12 title rate. The Pac-12 right now, we can talk USC, whatever. Oregon and Washington are two playoff teams. They're clearly playoff caliber teams. Time will tell if they can get there. And I think that there is also a very good case for Washington to be the best team in the country right now, talent composite aside. But to me, I think like I said, my main takeaway, let's be a little more rational about Colorado. They didn't do anything today. They weren't anyone today that they haven't been. Like, the offensive line is this, and the corners are this. But Oregon's also really good, and they have an actual defense. So
let's hear what Deion Sanders had to say after the game first, but then I'll give you my thoughts.
But I'm serious. I analyze and I understand what we're up against and what we have and what we need. One thing that I could say honestly and candidly, you better get me right now. This is the worst we're going to be. You better get me right now.
Yeah, so here's my entire take on Colorado. This was a very difficult position for Deion Sanders to start in.
What do you mean?
He flipped a,
like in general?
Just the team stunk last year,
right,
and he had a huge build to have for them to be competent.
Mm-hmm.
And they started off by beating TCU, which was a huge upset in a game. They were 21-point underdog. The following week, they beat Nebraska, and then the following week, they beat Colorado State in a very exciting overtime game. And because it's Deion, and because we had expectations of what they could be before the year, and those expectations were exceeded, every single week that they won and continued to keep their undefeated record, the hype continued to grow and grow and grow to the point where people were thinking, is this a Pac-12 championship type team? Is this a team that could win 10 or 11 games this year? And I think that we as a country, I don't know that I ever really believed that would be the case, but a lot of people started to believe that this was a very, very good football team. Not just a team that was better than what they were supposed to be, but like a legitimately good football team that belonged on the same field with teams that have been built for 3 or 4 years. And I think what we found out today is that Colorado is exactly where they should be, which is a team that beats teams that they're better than, but isn't quite ready to stack up against a legitimate playoff team. So I think that watching them lose this way will put a pin a little bit into the hype monster, because anytime you lose like this and you have to play USC next week, it could be a rough 2 weeks for them. But when you put it into perspective of what Colorado was, what Prime did in the offseason, and what they are right now, I think it is still a very ahead of schedule build. It's just, I think we lost track of what they are and what they were supposed to be. And just because they lost by, whatever they lost by 30, I'm not a very good, 36?
It honestly doesn't really matter what they lost by. It could have been.
Yeah, it could have lost by 100.
Many more, yeah. It was.
But also, too, they weren't supposed to not lose by 100. Yeah. Like, if you thought that they weren't supposed to lose by 100, then you weren't watching, the ailments that this team has. And by the way, when you lose a guy like Travis Hunter, you don't just lose one player. I feel like you lose 2.5. You lose your dynamic receiver, and you lose a dynamic cornerback at a position that you're already kind of worried about. And then on top of that, Oregon, before Dan Lanning got there, and now certainly with Dan Lanning, did a good job of emphasizing the lines that they built there. And they're just a much better team up front on both sides of the football. And I don't care how flashy your quarterback is or how ahead of schedule your receivers are. If you don't have an offensive and defensive line that can stack up with the big boys in this sport, this is what's going to happen.
That game was decided on the lines of scrimmage.
And I don't believe that Deion failed. I don't think that Colorado failed. I just think that it's a assignment or a correction of what they are, and a ability to watch them with a full heart and with a clear eyes, and to really know exactly moving forward what you're dealing with. And that doesn't mean they can't win 7 games or they can't win 8 games. If they win 8 games, that'd be a monumental success.
And
But they weren't supposed to be able to compete in this game. They were not.
Can I say something that might come off a touch pretentious? I'm gonna risk myself.
You're wearing a blazer at 1 a.m, so it wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
Here's the thing. A lot of the people talking about Colorado with the biggest microphones, be they major cable news networks in the late mornings. No, not us. Sorry. It is a big mic. But yeah. It is. It's a very impressive mic.
Don't underestimate the power of the audience of this podcast, okay? So don't go say that.
I'm not, but Ari, we don't have the same audience as First Take or Undisputed or Good Morning America. Okay. Well, anyway.
We have a smarter audience.
As respectfully as I can say this, they don't watch college football. It is not an educated college football opinion. They watch Colorado and maybe Alabama. And that's fine. That's their job. But I think that
it's not an emphasis in their programming, so it's not going to be an emphasis in what they study. Some of those places were
driving a lot of the Colorado conversation, which was so devoid of context that it's not even it's whatever. But I think a lot of people, are sort of just watching that and being like, well, Skip said they're going to be amazing. So they're probably going to be, it's just there's no way that I can put this where I'm just I don't you just don't watch the whole country. So I don't even know what to tell you about the Colorado conversation. So I apologize if it comes off pretentious, but we watch the sport, Ari. People that cover college football, the people that are in the college football sphere, 24/7 or whatever, I would say 90% of the conversation was very rational about Colorado of they're playing above their weight right now. And there's a chance that this can really get ugly. And I think a lot of people felt that way. I thought they could score some today and keep up, but I thought they were going to get very clearly beaten. But I think for them to be beaten as viciously as they were today, I think there's some more rationality coming to the Colorado conversation.
Well, I want to contextualize this too. Because a lot of times we come on here at 1 a.m. after a Saturday game and break down that game, but Colorado and what it has done through the first month of this season, I feel like they're playing with house money right now.
They are. It's impressive. It is impressive.
It's already been impressive
and overhyped at the same time.
But they've already had the environments. They've had the recruiting visits. Mm-hmm. They've had Travis Hunter has already shown every 5-star prospect in America what it is like to play for Deion. Mm-hmm. I feel like they have the ammunition, and what he said after the game today that you guys heard just a minute ago about you better get me now. This is going to be the worst that we're going to be. I genuinely believe that. I don't know that I believed it fully before the season, but I truly, with every fiber of my being, believe that Colorado, if they stay with this, and Deion is the coach there for 3 or 4 or 5 more years, will be a very good football team eventually. And that, to me, is an exciting proposition. Now, we don't need to get into a discussion about his foot or how long he's going to be the head coach there. I saw some bullshit about how the NFL is going to come calling for him. I don't know if he's an NFL coach. I think that his beauty is the ability to create the hype machine that he created.
Well, and he has an obsession with mentorship. He has had that for a long time. And you're not a mentor.
Somebody like Deion, I think that his beauty and the thing that makes a college football coach truly great is the ability to amass talent. So he's a lethal weapon in the college space. So I don't know if you want to go give him the Cleveland Browns and let him try to work through the Deshaun Watson situation right now, but that's not what I believe his strong suit would be. I believe that he has already proven more than apt to be in this position. I believe that Colorado is 4 steps ahead of where I thought they would be. And I also don't think anything that I thought about Colorado changed because they lost to a team that has been building this way for years. So,
and I think to close the discussion, Ari, I think I agree with you. And to make it real, if Deion got a commit from Bryce Underwood in the next 6 weeks, would either one of us think twice about that?
The fact that it's possible is legitimately the whole reason why I believe this. So
I'd be I get it.
Yes. All right, Dave, we got a really late start on the show, and I thought it was good to jump right into it. But first, let me just do the spiel here, if you don't mind. Okay, so bear with me. Thank you guys for listening to the latest edition of Until Saturday. We're going to keep going here shortly after this, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys are making sure that you are following the podcast on Apple, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Please leave us a 5-star review and leave a question with your review, and we will answer it on the show if it's a 5-star. Subscribe to the Until Saturday YouTube channel. If you're watching it live with us right now, we love you. If you watch it with us live on Thursday and Sunday for the Sunday Sound Off, we love you. But if you're listening to this in podcast form first thing in the morning on Sunday, the link to the YouTube channel can be found in the show's description. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and vice versa. If you are only a YouTuber, find us on your podcast feeds. Also, be sure to leave a voicemail and text Until Saturday at 316-462-9852. Again, that is 316-462-9852. Leave a voicemail and we will try to get your voice, your question, your comment, your insult, anything you have to say onto the show when we go live at roughly 6:30 on Sunday evening. So, all the links that you need will be found in the show's description. Also, be sure to read our coverage on The Athletic. I wrote a column off of the Notre Dame Ohio State game. Dave wrote off of the Oregon Colorado game, and there's just so much college and football information
And
on
Ari,
the website.
we got a guest on the Sunday Sound Off tomorrow.
Yeah. The special guest is who I had dinner with last night, Dan Rubenstein.
The pizza man himself.
I need to text him first in the morning to confirm that, but he is becoming a really good friend of mine, and I'm really happy to have him on. He's from the Solid Verbal, and if you haven't heard his voice, you'll realize how awesome he's at podcasting when he joins us on Sunday. So, okay, the game of the week before the games of the week happened were at noon. Florida State, Clemson. We talked about how this was going to be an iffy game. The line was weird, but we were going to find out if Clemson has a chance to show the country that it has a pulse and maybe compete again for the ACC championship. And we were going to find out if Florida State was a legitimate national championship contender. I think we found out a lot about both teams on Saturday morning. Florida State survived a 31-24 in overtime. It looked like Clemson was going in for the kill to go up by 2 scores there at the beginning or end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter. And then Florida State had a strip sack that they took back like 80 yards to tie the game and then eventually won in overtime. Very thrilling game. I felt like Clemson was going to win for 3.5 quarters of that game, but Florida State found a way, and that's what good teams do, right, Dave?
Yeah, Florida State makes me nervous. Like, the team that we saw in the second half against LSU, have we seen that team again?
Mm-mm. But I think
I'm
it's
not
really
sure
hard
who
to
that
do that
team
a lot.
was.
I mean, like
Well,
how
a
times
lot,
can you
sure, but like we haven't seen that team since then. So that makes me nervous about this Florida State team. But I will say the thing that I like about this Florida State team is they seem to understand who they are, which is, hey, our receivers are awesome. When we get in tight spots, let's go let Keon Coleman go make a play. And I think that if you're sitting here on September 23rd and you have some understanding of your identity, you're ahead of a lot of teams. And so, Florida State sort of understands that. They know, like Jordan Travis playing today, he's bleeding all over the place. He's got a shoulder and elbow. It was all,
I mean, he was letting his left arm dangle during the game.
Yeah.
So whatever injury that he suffered in the Boston College game
was still very much there.
Anybody who watched the game knew that he was struggling physically in some regard. Yet still threw for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns. His 2 top receivers, Johnny Wilson, 5 receptions, 94 yards, and Keon Coleman, 5 receptions, 86 yards, and 2 scores, including the catch in overtime. Like, I'm looking at the Florida State team, and I feel like the growth of the team, maybe you don't believe that they could win a national championship. I still question that to this day, but you're looking at the schedule here. Virginia Tech, Syracuse, they get to play Duke at home this year. Wake Forest at Pitt, then Miami, and then Florida are this is a very navigatable. It's a very easily to navigate schedule that I think
you don't need Magellan to get there.
Yeah. I think that there's a real chance here that they could do something to get into the playoff. And listen, going on the road for the second consecutive week, playing a team like Clemson that's desperate to prove that it's not a joke. Navigable is the word. Thank you, Jimmy. Navigable.
if they say so.
Is that the word?
I'm gonna.
That doesn't sound right.
He probably Googled it. It doesn't sound right to me, but I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt.
I'm not a doctor, but it was a very quality win to me.
Well, it is, and also I think that it's important to note that this is a snapshot in time, and even though they're 2-2, Ari, by December 6th or whatever the date is, that's probably a top 25 win. I think Clemson's going to be in the top 25.
And they might play again. I don't know. I don't know if they'll play again. They've got 2 ACC losses, but the one thing I will say is that I felt very terrible for the kicker that came back to join the team. Clemson made a phone call last week to get a kicker that was on the team for 4 years to rejoin the team when that kicker was trying to go into the professional world. He decided to delay his professional life to rejoin the team and then missed a crucial field goal there at the end of the game that probably would have won it for Clemson. Clemson had 3 or 4 different opportunities in this game to win and did not. And I don't know if you perceive that to be Florida State taking it from them or Clemson fumbling the bag a little bit. I think it was kind of a little bit of both. But
I don't think it matters. You just got to win. You just got to win.
And listen, Florida State's at a place right now. I think I read a stat where they 1-9. And the kicker's name was Jonathan Whites. Sorry for not saying it before, but where it doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter how it happens. It's just a different result. So Florida State winning this game, reasserting itself as a legitimate power in the ACC, I think is fun for the sport. I think if Jordan Travis can get healthy, I think Benson is a very good back. I think, their defensive front is really good. Jared Verse is going to be a top 5 pick. They have the pieces in the right spots to be dangerous against anybody in the country. And frankly speaking, Dave, if you think that Ohio State, the team that I watched on Saturday night, is a top 3 team and a legitimate national championship contender, there's nothing that you could say to me on this podcast right now about Florida State not being able to beat that team. If they played tomorrow, I would probably pick Florida State. So
really?
Ohio State isn't great right now. I don't know what game you watched, but I thought that they were just fine.
I think you're on. I just think I think I hold Notre Dame in a higher esteem than you do. I think that's part of it. I think this is not to belabor the point, Ari, but it goes back to the Texas Bama Rorschach test in that I think Notre Dame is still one of the 6 best teams in the country, and that's just a slobber.
You think Ohio State's got the best win in college football this year so far?
Yeah. I mean, on the road at Notre Dame, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know.
Although I think
that Florida State kicking the crap out of LSU is a better way.
I suspect that in December, Florida State beating LSU that way might be. But you went into Notre Dame and won, so even if that's 2 top 10 teams, that's probably still more impressive.
Yeah.
And
listen,
sort of,
I don't like to act or to take anything away from a team that just won the way that they did. But I think that if you've watched Ohio State as much as I have for the past 5-10 years, you know it when you see it, and I don't know if I know it right now. So we'll see what happens as they continue to go on. Very nice win.
Ari, I think you're overrating the rest of the field, honestly.
Well, that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Florida State, I think, matches up quite well with all the team. Alabama almost lost again. We'll get to that. They've already lost this year. Georgia is Georgia. Ohio State is Ohio State. But then who else?
I mean, I think so. TBD on Georgia, TBD on Michigan, who has not looked super sharp. But at the moment, Florida State, Texas, I guess Penn State, Washington, somehow people still aren't taking seriously. And then, these are all teams that look like, there's probably, and then of course, Oregon, we've somehow left out. You look around, I'm going to jump LSU up there, probably against your wishes, but there's probably 10 teams right now. Maybe 8 to 10 teams that you could say they're playing.
There are a lot of people on the dance floor. There's a lot of people on the dance floor, but Michael Jackson's not out there yet. I don't know if there is a team out there that I look at and are in a trance of that's it right there.
I was going to say Chris Brown might be a better example, but that's worse. Well, not worse.
Yeah, who's really good at dancing that wasn't terrible off the dance floor? I don't know.
Can we get an uncanceled good dancer? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who's good? The chat could probably help us out with that. Anyway.
I've got some pretty good moves.
We might need to have you prove that, Ari. Yeah, I mean, I think right now, if you look around, Ari, and if you really wanted to, could you not make the case that Ohio State's the best team in the country right now? If you really wanted to, could you not make the case that Florida State's the best team in the country right now?
Yeah, I think that's what I was saying.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah.
it's at this point, like when nobody, I think I really want to make the case for Washington. That might be what I have to write this week, Ari.
Yeah, you got to call them on
somehow
Monday. You got to fill out. Yeah.
I think that might be because like, at the end of the day, if the team at this point, this team showing the fewest warts is something to behold. And if you're looking for reasons to denigrate, they let Cal score 32 in a game that they scored 59 is probably that's probably the biggest strike against Washington.
Yep.
So,
okay. So I think those were the big games of the day on Saturday. I think we learned a lot. Let's go through some of the other games quickly here. Okay.
Yes.
Alabama outscored number 15 Ole Miss 18-3 in the second half. Eventually won 24-10. I think I had a pretty good feeling that Alabama was going to win this game. And, Lane Kiffin was playing around a lot with Nick Saban during the week. They seemed relaxed. Alabama was in a dire position, but Jalen Milroe as the starting quarterback officially announced 253 yards, one touchdown, 80% completion percentage and 118 total yards between Buckner and Simpson against USF last week. So Alabama, gets the job done. I think they can start to settle into the notion that their quarterback is who he is and try to win games around him. I mean, Jalen Milroe went 17 for 21. He had a pick, but he threw for 225
however you got there, I think he ended the conversation today, right? Whatever.
Well, the conversation I believe was ended on Monday. But I think that
be
said,
not by Nick Saban. I mean by just the
I just think there's something to be said about knowing who your guy is and trying to play through that person rather than the grab ass of what they were doing.
I don't know that he's a world beater, but he gives you the best chance to win ball games. I think that much is clear.
Yeah,
and so let him play, game plan some stuff around him. I'd like to know how many designed runs. It's tough to get these like analytics, these advanced numbers, but I'd be curious to know how many designed runs they had tonight or today. I'd like to.
Tony Ayo's in the chat right now making fun of people with small hands. I've got the smallest hands ever.
I have pretty normal size hands.
I've got very small hands.
I can palm a women's ball if that means anything.
My wife is 4'11" and her hands are almost as big as mine. But I was very amused by Lane Kiffin kind of making some jokes all week and kind of aiming, playing fun and whatever with Nick Saban. And then in the post game, somebody asked him if he knew who was calling plays for Alabama after the game. And this is the soundbite from that.
What do you think was calling defensive plays for Alabama this afternoon?
I don't know. They did a good job. So I commend them. Maybe coach took over.
What's going on with the Bangs?
I don't know. I don't know.
Have
you seen the movie Kingpin?
The movie what?
Kingpin.
Oh, no, but I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
It is one of the greatest cinematic achievements in the history of our country. Oh my gosh! Go watch it.
Whether or not it's too late to even have this conversation.
Should we stop the podcast so that you can go watch it right now?
Yeah, let's have a live stream of us watching Kingpin. That's the Sunday Sound Off show.
Like this is like the new unbelievable fun fact about Dave Ubbin of the week is like this guy is somehow not seen great cinematic achievements.
We got who else is in it? Jeff Daniels and who else is in that movie?
Jeff Daniels is not in Kingpin. It's
is that Bill Murray?
Bill Murray is the villain of the movie, and what's the guy's name from White Men Can't Jump? Very famous
Woody
actor.
Harrelson. Yeah,
Woody Harrelson. Yeah. Those very, 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 very good movie. But I can't make the point I was going to make because you haven't seen it, which is unbelievable.
Go ahead. Our viewers have seen it. They can. I mean, I'm sure they.
Big Earn McCracken at the end of the movie when he's bowling for his life.
Spoiler.
His hair got a little messed up. It happens when you're in the heat of battle. Next game here, Dave. Utah stifles UCLA's offense. Wins 14-7 without Cam Rising. I thought that was another good win. And
Ari, we mentioned it on Thursday. We did it again.
We did it again.
We've underrated Utah.
Yeah, so here's the thing. Everybody's worried about the Pac-12 and whether the shine was going to kind of come off this week. And USC won, Washington won. They put 59 points up, as you mentioned. Oregon 1, and Utah 1. So they're going to have 4 teams in the top 10 probably this week. And they do play each other, so they're going to have to lose. But USC played some grab ass with Arizona State tonight, and I think it was a 1-possession game in the fourth quarter. They ended up winning by 2 touchdowns.
Kenny Dillingham was on one. Onside kicks, trick plays.
I mean, what do you do?
They were going hard.
In that position.
He said you play to win the game this week, and he played to win the game. Props to
Yes,
him.
and I am 100% here for the notion that in the last year of the Pac-12's existence, that they get 2 teams in and the SEC gets none. That would be
That's the
hilarious
funniest outcome of the season. No question.
And it's out there on the table. Now, I don't know if Georgia's going to lose, but it's out there on the table. So next one here, Dave. Speaking of the Pac-12, Washington State comes out and beats Oregon State 38-35. Washington State having a sneaky good campaign, might jump into the top 15. And here's a soundbite from that game too.
We're gonna skip the soundbite.
Okay, we're gonna skip the soundbite.
Basically, Jake Dickert after the game took umbrage with Lee Corso's suggestion. I heard that he may have misspoken or misheard. Lee Corso said that the no one watches bowl. I've heard that, and Corso, God bless him, can be a little bit under tough to understand. Supposedly, there may have been a no one wants us bowl. Either way, the Pac-2 championship game today was very entertaining, and the idea that Corso is what he is an institution. But anytime anybody from ESPN wants to have any conversation about or even hit on what's the deal with the Pac-12 now? It's crazy. The Pac-12 is doing all this and doesn't get a TV contract and is about to die. It's who do you think is in part responsible for that? Come on now. Somebody could have offered him a TV contract and no one did. I say that. I mean, no one did that they felt like they wanted to take. So,
but I think it is cool that Washington State is joining the fray in this Pac-12 madness, and they're undefeated, and they have a win over a ranked opponent, and they beat Colorado State worse than Colorado did. It's another team to have to consider, and whenever you have undefeated teams with ranked wins, going into week 5 of the year, that's an exciting notion. So, okay, let's get to the next game here, and we have a graphic for it. Brian Ferentz legitimately is not going to make it to the drive at 325. He's not going to do it. They've got 85 total points, 240 points away still, and they need an average of 26.7 points per game to reach it this year. Penn State beat the crap out of Iowa on Saturday night, and it was a rainy, disgusting game. And I cannot stop myself from thinking that the Penn State fans get one whiteout a year, and they had to spend this year's whiteout in a torrential downpour watching Iowa's offense trying to get a first down. And I think the stat is that Iowa managed only 4 first downs the entire game. Penn State won 31
Are you serious?
to nothing.
Is it really that bad?
I think it was every bit as
I
bad.
watched a little bit of it. What did I say, Ari? I said 34-10. I said, somebody give me a reason to believe this game will not be 34-10. And it turns out I was giving Iowa too much credit.
Drew Aller, 25 for 37, 166 yards and 4 touchdowns. You want to believe that Penn State is different this year. This type of game, everybody just assumed was going to be a Big Ten, brawl with, a bunch of rain and very few points and like a 19-12 type game or a 10-3. And Penn State won 31-0. Their defense didn't allow Iowa to score. Cade McNamara went 5 for 14 for 42 yards in this game. 42 yards. And then the team rushed total for 20. So they had less than 100 total yards of offense. I think this might have been the worst Iowa offensive performance of the last 2 years. And it is only getting immeasurably worse. Now, Penn State's a good football team, and I don't want to spend the entire segment taking away from Penn State's accomplishment and kicking the crap out of Iowa. But I'm just going to say this on the show. I'm getting tired. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but I'm going to say it. Like, at a certain point, does Brian Ferentz need to just step down? Like, I mean, like, at a certain point, do you like have to start considering that, hey, it'd be better for this team if I wasn't around?
I mean, it depends on your. I think that I don't know Brian Ferentz well, or at all, really.
Look
I'll
at the
say.
stat. Matthew C. just posted Penn State ran more plays than Iowa had yards.
Yeah. Now, because if you do that, Ari, there are some coaches, and I suspect that Brian is probably one of them, who believe that that's quitting on guys that are working for you, that have put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, all that, and you say, oh, well, I'm going to walk away. I think the real issue, and it's still a macro issue, is I can't believe that if you're Kirk Ferentz and you're running this program and you make an assessment of where everything is at and you say, this is the person that gives us the best chance to be the most successful football program that we can be. That, to me, like, I just can't even wrap my head around that. And, that's an ever-present reality in Iowa, but then when you get games like this where it just looks so hopeless, I'm sorry, Iowa fans. I know a couple of them, and I don't know what to tell you. I cannot imagine wrapping up my Saturdays and having an emotional attachment to having to watch that every week. I truly am like sad for them.
4 first downs, 1 of 9 on third down, 76 total yards, 56 yards passing, 20 yards rushing, and 4 turnovers.
I'm sorry, Iowa fans. It's funny, but like
I'm not even laughing this time. Like it's getting like to a point now where that's not even playing.
Yeah.
Are they even playing football?
They scored 41 last week, Ari. They scored 41 last week.
So pull the ladder out and crawl out.
We need another deep fake. I did see that that guy dropped a less convincing Matt Campbell deep fake. I missed what the context was, but
yeah, if he makes it more believable, they'll work better.
I mean, that last one was pretty believable, Ari. Like
pull the ladder out and crawl out of my ass. No, that was my favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 quick ones here, Dave, real quick. LSU beat Arkansas 34-31. I don't know if you were right about this team this year. You probably have noticed that you won't say die about the teams like Texas that won by 100, and you're very convinced with your preseason notions about Alabama, and you were right about that. But LSU, a win's a win, but it's just there's something off there.
Yeah, it's a rivalry game, Ari. What can I say?
Yeah, okay, here we go.
No, it's concerning, Ari. It really is.
When are you going to be concerned?
I'm already concerned. I mean, they have a loss, Ari. They have a bad loss. I was concerned after Florida State rolled up 38-3 on them for 2.5 quarters or whatever it was. I think LSU is good enough to get to the playoff, and they're still, I think, one of the 5 most talented teams. But you've got to climb over some people. You've got some opportunities for some big wins, obviously. And then, if you can get to Atlanta. But that's part of this too, Ari, is if you look around at the SEC West, would you really take someone else over LSU to get to Atlanta? Really?
Probably not, no.
Yeah. So, like, regardless of whatever happens, if you have a 2-loss LSU at the end of this thing that finds a way to beat probably Georgia, we'll just assume it's Georgia and Atlanta, that's still they'll have a shot.
I'm not talking
right?
about this with you.
Okay. All right.
We'll talk about the playoff later on. I was wondering if you were concerned they were going to lose 5 games this year, not turn this into what they can.
I'm not concerned they're going to lose 5. I think they'll drop 1 or 2 more, probably. Yeah. So
okay, just a few quick things I want to run through. It's the Give Them Their Flowers segment.
Yes.
Oklahoma beat Cincinnati 20-6. It was an ugly game, but they covered the spread and they
chugged Skyline after this. Ari.
Yeah.
Lukewarm Skyline out of cans. That should have been. That's
going to be like an Andy Staples eating challenge.
As a nation, we can't be letting that be broadcast over the airwaves. Can't.
Skyline actually isn't good. I've got news for you. I don't know if
it's not good. It's
cinnamon
terrible.
Is not a chili flavor in my opinion. Let me just give them their flowers here, Dave. West Virginia beat your preseason Big 12 champ, Texas Tech, 20-13, which was a Big 12 game, I believe. Tyler Shock broke his fibula against the Mountaineers. Kansas is 4-0 now in consecutive years for the first time since 1913-15. Jalen Daniels is one of the best players in the country, and I can't wait to watch him play. Wait for it, Texas. Speaking of the Longhorns, won. And your agenda is pushed back another week.
Can I say this, Ari? Can I say this?
No, you can't.
Can I get 15 seconds? 15
seconds on you said they might lose to Baylor before the game started?
To acknowledge that two things I think are true. Texas took care of business and looked very good tonight. Mm-hmm. And also, it's possible that Baylor might be the worst team in the Big 12. Let's move on.
38-6. They have Kansas and Oklahoma back-to-back weeks, which
Kansas can play, man. You got to win.
No, it's not an easy.
You got to win that game on the line of scrimmage. I'm not sure. Oklahoma today made me a little nervous. I think Cincinnati is a lot better than people.
If Texas gets through the next 2 weeks, buddy, I'm like, I think it's over.
Okay.
Houston.
So
BYU,
will they, Ari, and that's
K-State,
why it won't be.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We're getting close. We're getting real freaking close, pal, and it's gonna be so sweet if I'm right. Northwestern down 31-10 after 3 quarters, won 37-34 in overtime for a program that had the offseason that it went through. Very resilient win.
I'm happy for the kids on that team. The emotion after that game was really something to see. Also, Minnesota, what the heck?
Yeah,
like that. It's one thing to lose, but it's another thing to lose in the manner that they did. It's just like, I mean, I'd have to go look. Maybe producer Cam can look it up. Is 37 points more than Northwestern had scored the rest of the season combined?
Just vamp a little bit. Dun, 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 dun,
like
dun,
probably,
dun,
right?
Dun, 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 dun. Oh, they didn't. No, they've scored. Wait, yeah, they only scored 28 coming into the game.
So 28 points in 3 games.
No, that's not true. 36. They scored 38 against UTEP.
38 against UTEP.
Yeah,
so excuse me. Yeah. Anyway, UTEP's not.
It's a resilient win for a team that hadn't had the best.
I'm happy for those kids.
High five for the group of 5 here, Dave. Thanks. Boise State moved to 33-3 in conference play, topping San Diego State 34-31 on Friday night. I don't know what that means, 33-3 in conference play, but that's
no, like I think it's 33 of their last 36 games, I believe.
I think that's what it is.
But San Diego State, the shine's coming off them a little bit, but ultimately, really good win for Boise. Props to them.
Air Force moved to 4-0 on the year with a 45-21 win over San Jose State on Friday night. They trailed 20-10 with 30 seconds left in the first half, and then proceeded to score 35 unanswered points. Marshall moved to 3-0 with a win over Virginia Tech, 24-17. Liberty stays perfect on the year, handling FIU 38-6. Texas State rallies from a 17-point halftime deficit to beat Nevada. And Texas State band member threw Nevada's trident at Wolfpack's bench, spurring a 35.
There was no trident throw, supposedly. Supposedly there was a trident. I didn't know Nevada had a trident, honestly, but supposedly it was next to the bench, and people put 2 and 2 together. There's still the amateur detectives are still trying to figure this out. Time will tell. By the way,
the only time I ever think about with a trident throw is Anchorman. So,
yeah. Quick note on Marshall. You want a hot name on the coaching carousel. You want somebody who's getting it done.
Yeah.
Charles Huff is not that many wins away from getting some real serious shine.
2 years in a row with a Power 5 win too. They beat Notre Dame last year. So
and some shade after the game. Yeah, I believe he said they're a Power 5.
But also too, like they did it without having really great teams. So it's like that's impressive to me too. So
yeah.
Okay, guys. Sunday sound off is tomorrow. I've got a very early flight out of Chicago, and I'm still in South Bend, Indiana. So wish me luck.
Are you driving to Chicago after this, Ari?
Yeah.
Oh man,
I was a little discombobulated at the beginning of the episode.
I had never made the I-5 drive from Eugene to Portland. Anyone who has made I'm telling you, it was bumper to bumper for 50
Why
miles.
are you why are you in this position right now? Like the game was at noon, wasn't it? Or it was 2:30 your time.
It was
for my time. So it was like, why are you 10 hours with the blazer on still?
I just got back to the hotel. I stopped.
Dude, when I get
did
to my car, I'm taking my pants off and driving back in my boxers. And like,
Ari, I
I
have a
dare
quick
somebody to
question
pull
for
me
you.
over.
I have a confession, and I want you to
Oh God, here we go, guys. Get ready for it.
I don't eat a lot of food, Ari, but I did one of the fattest things I've ever done in my life tonight.
What is the fattest thing you've ever done after you just tell me this?
Tonight was pretty bad, all right? I stopped at In-N-Out between Eugene and Portland.
Mm-hmm.
I was starving. I had 2 grilled chicken breasts and like a piece of bread for lunch, and then I didn't eat anything else. I was starving. I did the double meal with a double on the side.
That's your fattest moment?
It's up there. Is this a
That's like
routine thing that people do?
Tuesday for everybody else. Like, what are you talking about?
People are not doing 4 patties at In-N-Out. No, they're not.
The fattest moment of my life was when I drank excessively in Vegas and like took someone's leftovers off of their tray that they left in the freaking hallway into my room and ate chicken fingers with my friend. Like, what are you talking about? That's the weakest fat moment ever. I have a buddy who threw away a cake outside of his house because he didn't want to eat it and then went out an hour later and pulled it out of the dumpster and ate it. Like, that's the weakest fat moment I've ever heard in my entire life.
I texted it to my wife and she was downplaying it and I felt bad. I was ashamed to order it, Ari. The guy looked at me where he's like, "You want a second double also?" And I was like, "Yeah, yes." I can't believe I'm being shamed for not having an impressive enough.
I mean, you made it seem like you did something like repulsive or you ordered an obscene amount of food. It really isn't that big of a deal. Like,
all right.
Mostly everybody gets a
but
fast food meal with something on the side. Like, I think the number one like meal in America is like Big Mac with 6-piece nugget on the side. Like, you're not that far off from that.
2 doubles I felt like was a lot. I have not done that. I moved away from Dallas a while ago. I don't have access to In-N-Out. I haven't had it.
It's beautiful.
I've had it probably a couple times in the last year just on the road, and I missed it. And I saw it this morning and I was like, I gotta hit that back up on the way back. It was insane. A lot of people in Deion Sanders jerseys and Oregon jerseys. A lot of fans.
Urban has some very bad food takes, almost as bad as LSU and Texas takes. I got to tell you, man, we're on a podcast here where we used to do eating challenges, and Andy's like had like 60 Chick-fil-A nuggets. Like, you've got a long way to go if you think that's like the bottom of the barrel.
It wasn't the bottom of the barrel, but it was, to me, it felt like crossing a very
I'm happy that you're
threshold.
in great shape. All right, I got to hit the road here, pal. But let me just say,
yes,
our locks of the week were UNC -7.5. I think we all got that right.
Didn't come back to bite us. I was surprised, honestly.
And when we all agreed on the same lock of the week, that was a pretty good,
that was bad omen.
Scenario.
But sometimes you get it right.
Also, Dan Rubenstein of the Solid Verbal is going to be joining us on Sunday Sound Off on Sunday when I get back to Dallas. And hopefully you'll be back in Knoxville by the time that this goes on.
Barring delays. It's gonna be
thank you guys
tight,
all for tuning in to Until Saturday. Be sure to follow the podcast, review, listen to the podcast, like, subscribe, review, share, everything on all the platforms. We appreciate your continued support. Thank you so much to those who stayed up live and watched us. And we will come back with a more rested and efficient episode on Sunday afternoon. Until then, that was Until Saturday.